Hey, check this out. Of course, you can't see it, but it's raining. Yeah. So, you look at the water everywhere. We've been getting rain all night long. The Weather Service is calling this an atmospheric river. Get that, man. Atmospheric river. Now, look at that. It's piling up in the flower beds. Yeah, anyways. Atmospheric river. So here's one of the deals you may or may not know. In California, a lot of people don't know this. California is a big delta. The whole San Joaquin Valley is a river delta. Nobody knows that because $150 years ago, you see, 150 years ago when they came in here and started farming, I mean, everybody has seen the pictures of the great floods and all these, years gone by, but they've forgotten about them. But when you look at the surveys, land surveys and land maps, and especially if you've bought property or houses in any areas in the San Joaquin Valley, you run into a time or a place where you've been asked to provide flood insurance for your property in your home, and you're like, flood insurance? We have been in a drought for 20 plus years. We don't have floods. Well, your house is on a flood map. I didn't know we had a flood map, but we have hundreds, if not thousands, of canals that may be man-made, but they're man-made along the same paths of the original tributaries and drainage rivers for the area. And so we've got all these canals and rivers, bridges, crossing river roads everywhere. They're all over. You ignore them because 90% of the time they're dry. There's no water in them. And much like the desert with the arroyos and what have you. And you get a rain event and then you get a flash flood. So same kind of situation. Years back, the valley was a delta. It's where all the water gathered and drained out towards the ocean, up through Stockton, Sacramento area, and out to San Francisco Bay. All the water made its way that way. And so this whole valley is a great seabed, if you will, and that's why the soil is so good. It carries all the minerals and sediments and organic matter from the mountains down across this huge valley and out towards the ocean, creating this wonderful farmland that we have here. And it's some of the best farmland in the world, the majority of this San Joaquin Valley. And in natural cycles, it was pretty flat. I mean, it was pretty flat. But natural cycles of dryness, the valley floor would dry out, and all that, this stuff would settle, and the normal snowmelt runoff, you'd have these rivers and canals, and that's where they would set up irrigation pumps and build irrigation trenches and canals off of these rivers. This was back 150 years ago. But that's why they called this the Visalia Delta. The name of the newspaper is the Times Delta, because this was a river delta. And this was the Kauai River Delta. And the name of the hospital is Kauai Delta Hospital. You know, we are so dry and have been for so many years, and so people don't remember and don't realize that's our history. They came in when farming started getting big, and they needed more consistent water, and the government built many reservoirs up here in these foothills, and you know, there's a bunch of everything you do, there's controversy involved, but there's controversy with that because some of the lands that are now underwater had Native American significance, or had once been a settlement. And so there's people, there are pros and cons, right? And so but they've been there for 100 years now, some of these reservoirs. And many of them have power stations on them, which, I mean, let's get real. You got the dam built, you're going to hold the water so you can farm ag land with it, you know. That's what you're going to do with that water. You're going to agriculture with it. Well, if you're going to ag with the water, and you've already paid for that, you've already set funding aside for the water, to hold the water. So the water's free. It's coming from the snow melt. You're going to use it for farmland. It's still free, but you're going to charge farmers for the water. So you're making money off that water that was free. Why don't you put a electric generator at that dam, generate electricity? The water's free. The water's paid for. The water's paid for itself twice. Let's use that water to create electricity. And so they did. Zero pollution. The environmental setbacks have already been incurred 150 years ago, when some ground was covered in water. Some Native American sites have been destroyed. You can't undo it. All right, maybe that was a bad thing, but you can't fix that. You can't go back and redo or replace those sites. Right? You can't go back. They're destroyed. They maybe they shouldn't have been, but they were. And so now you're somewhere else. Okay? Now you have a different situation. So now do you create more harm by trying to rectify something? No, don't do that. Well, why create more harm? You've got the electric power plants operating. You're making 3 times you're making money on free water. It's free. So now all the canals after the electricity generators, right, power plants, all the canals now have been connected and designed and had gates put in, and they're controlled. from the river all the way to the final lake that they end up in, or the mouth of the Sacramento River, all the way to the ocean. Every canal and river, every mountain lake, all the drainage is controlled before it finally gets to the ocean. Whatever I was talking about, that's the truth. What was I talking about? I don't remember what I was telling you guys. But, all the water. See, I'm telling a big story, and I get off track for a couple of reasons. One, I do that. But two, issues in California are complicated and complex. And I don't think, it's easy to have a feeling or an opinion, an opinion and a feeling about any given circumstance, right? Any given circumstance, it's easy to find a side to stand on and have an idea about it. But it's not easy to come up with solutions for problems in a state as big and diverse as California. Not just racially diverse. It's diverse in so many areas and ways. Just the size alone makes issues. Any given issue of water, waste, city functions, traffic, human necessities, all of those issues are different in one city than they are the next, and from one end to the other end of any given area of this state. So, how to manage water. I kind of like the idea of using the water multiple times. That seems to me to be one of the most prudent things we could do with the water. And it's not popular in current trends, right? And they want to spend their money and resources on alternative energies. So they're diverting funding and providing funding for alternative energies research when you've got free water that you can charge people for, that you can charge them for the electricity you generate with the water. That's the best use of funds, and that resource will provide, that water will provide more energy. That water provides more energy than all the wind energy and all the solar energy to date provided in California. We don't have the capacity to equal the capacity of electricity generated by hydroelectric. And they've stopped maintaining the hydroelectric dams. They've stopped maintaining the reservoirs that hold the water for ag because they don't want to give the water to the farmers. They want to flush the river, the Sacramento River, and push that water all the way out to the ocean because they no longer have salmon in the Sacramento River. Well, it's been gone for 50 years or more, the salmon. But they've got, this little fish, looks like a minnow. They call it a smelt. They claim that if we don't keep the water flowing, the smelt dies. And if we can keep the smelt, the salmon will come back for it. But I got news for you. the salmon return to the spot where they were spawned. That means where they were born. If they were not born in that Sacramento River, they're not coming to that Sacramento River to spawn themselves. Right? Unless they get lost. And if they get lost, then you got the dumbass salmon coming to the Sacramento River. That's what you want? You want Sacramento River full of dumbass salmon? They return to where they were spawned. I don't know. But we keep flushing enough water out that river to irrigate this entire San Joaquin Valley. But now we don't have enough water. And our crops are going dry because our farmers are being charged 3 and 4 times the agreed upon contracted amounts for the water they use. And they're being limited to 50, 20, 10% of the contract they were promised. You want to know why food prices are going up? Because the state of California restricts the amount of water farmers can use to grow crops, thereby, and then raises the price on the water they use, thereby increasing cost of production of any given food source, reducing yield of said food source, thereby increasing costs of said food source. You see, California state is interfering with the farmer's ability to grow food, and I don't know what you people think or where you people think food comes from, but if you keep putting these farmers out of business in the state of California, you're going to have some wonderful building sites. You're going to have some great construction sites. But you're going to be bringing food in from Argentina or China. You're already bringing food in from China. I talked to you yesterday about the food that's grown in California. They won't let you bring it in from other states if you don't agree to these certain terms. But they're bringing food sources in from China. They're bringing food here from China. They're sending food from farms in the United States to China to be processed. And then they're sending that food from China back to the States, and we're buying it, and they don't have to market from China. They get to market that it originated in the USA. So it's not marked made in China. But those facilities in China, you think they follow the same requirements that the state of California requires for all the operators within the state or anybody in the United States selling product to them? They don't follow those rules. It's ridiculous that we have let so much control of what we do and where we get our food go to foreign entities. It's ridiculous when we depend on energy from foreign entities, because even if you're not mad at them, any foreign entity could be your enemy. And if you're dependent on them for your life sustenance, that's not a good thing when you have the ability to provide that sustenance yourself here. And now everybody's experienced the high cost of fuel. And they say, well, maybe we should produce more of our own fuel. Okay, that would help, right? We don't want to be dependent on foreign entities. But now you don't want me to farm because you don't want me to use the water, or you want to put farmers out of business because they use so much water. Well, guess what? You want to eat, you got to use water. You want to buy your food from China, Argentina, Thailand? You want to bring your food in from third world countries, communist countries? They don't have safe farming practices. They're not adhering to Walmart's safe practices. They're not following those. And they got you by the short hairs, man. They got you by the short hairs because you stop producing food here, and then you have some reason you sever relationships with that country, and that country just stops shipping food. They got you by the short hairs, man. Anyways, back to the water. So all the canals control all the water. But before they made all the canals, they made maps and surveys, and they marked on those maps where all the water went every year when it rained. Flood maps. Well, they're within 50 to 150, 200 feet, quarter mile of every river. So, you buy a house and they tell you, well, you got to have a flood, you're on a flood map. And you're like, I'm nowhere near a lake or a river or anything. Yeah, but you're on a flood map. Well, it's a 200-year-old flood map. It never floods here. Well, it did in the 50s, and there's photos all over this place underwater. We haven't had enough rain for that type of a flood in a long time, but we've just sustained, I think, since November, like we're at close to 18 inches, which is record levels of rain for this winter season. We don't get that kind of rain. Our ground's saturated, and now they say we have a river, an atmospheric river coming over the state. I don't know, but we're gonna see some flooding this time. Guess what the tragedy is? The tragedy is the reservoirs that are still functioning are full. They're full. One rain season, those reservoirs are full. The snowpack is deeper than it's been in 20 years. We don't have any reservoirs to put the water in. That's a sin. We have no reservoirs to put all this water in. Free water that could be saved and controlled, and could have controlled release of this water for more than a year. If you collected it all, you could safely save and release that water for multiple years and help offset drought conditions. That's part of the reason those reservoirs were put in the first place. The system, that old system worked, and it still works, but it's too small for the capacity of the people living in the San Joaquin Valley now. California has tripled in size since the 50s. These ideas worked, but we need more reservoirs. They never built enough reservoirs, and now they don't maintain them. So some of these reservoirs no longer have dams that are functioning, and so they've opened the gates. No water storage. We need to be storing water, folks. But we're going to let it all go to the river. Let it all go right out the San Joaquin River, out the Sacramento River, right out San Francisco Bay. And a lot of places that are on a flood map are going to be underwater. And people are going to go, whoa, what's about all this flooding? Well, you're built on a flood map. Because our valley floor is flat. Yeah. Stockton is 170 miles north of where I am. The elevation of the land in Stockton is 4 feet to 13 feet above sea level. The elevation in Visalia, where I am today, the elevation is 300, give or take, 50 feet, over 170 miles. So it's flat. It's going to fill up with water this year.